A few people have asked me over the last couple of weeks about my Groundbait mix, and in particular, what I'm putting in it, but more importantly, how I managed to hold the balls together and catapult them 16 rod lengths, 12 rod lengths, whatever, out without them breaking up. And trust me, we've all been there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my mix and how I mix it, what I put in it, and the way I stop it from breaking up. So the first thing that goes in are some of these cell micro pellets. You can see they're really quite small, maybe a couple of mil, and I've got a good sprinkling of them in. The next thing that goes in are some of these tiny little fish meal pellets, and they are tiny. You can see they're 1.5 mil, 1 mil, really small. As the water starts to warm up and the fish become more aggressive, then I start upping the size of the pellets that I'm feeding, but I never ever go much above 4 mil. Last thing I want to do is fill them up with my free offerings, and then they turn their nose up at what I've got on my hook. This way, they'll graze, for want of a better term, and then they'll come across my hook bait and hopefully think, oh, it's a bit more substantial. Again, good handful of those go in. Next thing that goes in is some sweet corn, Lidl's. It's absolutely brilliant. I don't strain it off. I just put it straight in with the juice. Really good sized corn, and I'm just going to put the majority of that in. Just keep a little bit back for my hook bait to go on with my worm. Then I'll put some of this. I get them from Dean's Tackle in Clacton, and they do a lot of this, the micro pellet, this bloodworm ground bait, which again adds a little bit of colour to it, a little bit of flavour. And I found they like the bloodworm pellet and they like the bloodworm ground bait over here, but you don't want too much. I mean, that you can see in the bottom there, that's how much I'm going to put in. So that's going to all go in. I've got a spare bag in case I need to top my bait up. Next thing that goes in, again from Clacton Angling Centre, Dean's Tackle it is, right in the high street, just behind where the amusements are. Good shop, nice people, good gear, sensible prices. Black crumb, I want to try and darken my ground bait down a little bit so it matches the bottom. I'm in a new area, as I said earlier, and it's quite silty on the bottom and quite black, and the surrounding area is quite muddy. And the last thing I want is to have a really pale ground bait, because I think on a big predator water like this, and believe me, there's some enormous pike in here, I think the fish are, they've grown up being scared that they're going to get eaten by a pike. So swimming over a really pale area of ground bait means they stand out like a sore thumb, and something in their psyche shies them away from it. So whether this is actually works like this, because obviously fish don't think the same as we do, I'm not really sure. But for me, it's just about taking care of those little edges of what might be, what might spook them, what might scare them, and whether it's because they don't want to swim over that light area because they're going to be seen by a pike and attacked by a pike, or whether they're just uncomfortable, or whether it just stands out too much. Anyway, a good amount of that's going to go in. So it's about a third of a bag, and that's a kilo bag there. And then the most important one for me is this Cop Doc Mill uh, protein plus tension bream. This has got so many good ingredients in it. There's a bit of tiny little bit of LT94, some Crevini 66 in there. I think they call LT94 Grimsby 94 now. Bit of crumb, just it just works and it binds really well. So there's a good amount of that. Um, Nearly half a bag going in now of that. You can see I'm down there. So probably about a third of a bag. But the last thing that goes in is some of this liquid Brazil bait tech. That's my favourite one. They do Brazil sweet corn as well, which works really well for me. But I had this coat my braid in it, like I said previously when I was talking about my rigs, just to take, I don't know, just give me a little bit of an edge. But this adds a little bit of stickiness to the ground bait, so a good couple of squirts of that in. Don't need a lot of it. Then the next thing I do is I'll start mixing it up. So before I add any water or anything, I'll stir it all round, and then what I do is I add the water to it gradually. What I want is I want a consistency where um, it's just binding together in the hands. So I'll show you exactly what I mean. Give it a good old mix. Make sure all the corners are done. I don't want no dry bits. If you get any dry bits in there, there's more chance of those balls that have got the dry bits in them breaking up. That looks absolutely on the money. So this is what you want. You want it to be able to bind together like that. And that's the perfect size. It's a little bit damp, but by the time I get around to catapulting it out, it would have dried off a little bit. What I will do is I'll mix a few of these up. I'm going to go with about a dozen of them. So I'll mix these up. I'm going to see how I feel. I tend to, with the amount of ground baiting I put in, I tend to follow my gut feel. So I'll mix these up and I'll get back to you and I'll show you the last bit that I do. My balls mixed up. I don't know if you can see them there. I've gone with 14. I'm umming and ahhing. It's flat calm again today. I'm fishing just 15 rod lengths out. I'm in 15 foot of water. It's an old irrigation channel. I guess it's probably about 5 meters wide, and it just goes from left to right, almost in a straight line. Either side of where I am, I've got about just over 14 foot. So I've got an extra, I would say 10 inches of water. Because it's an old irrigation channel, invariably it'll be silty. Now, that's where the spod over the top might come in, because it'll put a sprinkling out. I've had a feel out there with the lead, and it's not so soft as my ground bait's going to sink into the sill. It's quite firm, but what it will have is it'll have bloodworm in it. So this is what I do with my balls of ground bait. I just wet my hands in some water. I've got a bait box of water here, and I glaze them like this. So just puts a little coat on them, and I'll leave them to dry. And it just, I found, makes them stay together when I'm catapulting them out. Certainly if I'm at these sorts of distances. If I'm catapulting much past 10 rod lengths, it's a bit of pressure on the balls of ground bait, and you know, we've all been there. They break up on the way out, and you end up what we used to call it in the old days, feeding the gudgeon line at the inside, the margins. I don't want to scatter of ground bait all over the place. So it's as simple as that. I mean, what's that taking me? 30 seconds. I'll leave them to dry. In the meantime, what I'll do is I'm going to get my marker rod out in a minute. And this is another thing as well. Warm your, this is one of these old Drennan. I mean, it's seen better days, but that's been with me 25 years, I reckon. I haven't had to change the elastic, because what I do is I warm the elastic up. I do this for about 30 seconds. There's two reasons behind that. Firstly, if there's any dryness in the elastic from the last time I've used it, it breaks that off. But the other thing it does, if you start catapulting out, by the time you've got to the fourth or fifth bowl, the elastic's warmed up and the ground bait starts going a little bit further. And you know, the last thing you want, if you think about it, if you was fishing in the margins on a pole or on a waggler, you want your ground bait all in the same spot. And then you want to put your float or your bait where the ground bait is. And sometimes when people feed a fish, they cast out and it might be 10 foot away, and they'll say, oh, that'll do. There's no such thing as that'll do. You've got to be dead eyeball accurate. And a few of the people who know me, they'll see me cast 3, 4, 5, 6 times sometimes, because if it's a couple of foot off, it's not in the right spot. And I think this is also important where I'm fishing 3 rods, and I'll have them 3 rods 6 foot apart. So I don't want one that's there in position A, and then one that's 2 foot away from it, and the other one that's 10 foot away from that. I want them 6 foot apart. If you've got 2 rods that are 10 foot, 2 foot apart, chances are you walk into a decent sized fish, tench, bream, or a carp, you know what you're bringing in. You're bringing in that other line. 6 foot seems to be a decent distance where you can pretty much mostly, unless you get a really aggressive sideways take, you can pretty much get your fish in, get it up on the surface, and kite it round the other lines. You know, sometimes I'll drop the rod tip of the rod on the side of the landing net into the water so I can get the fish over the top of it, because 2 o'clock in the morning you're catching fish. Last thing you want to be doing is sitting there untangling an almighty bird's nest, and you end up having to recast all 3 rods, by which time you're wide awake. So anyway, I'm going to get the bait out now and I'll get back to you.